Hi, everybody. Yeah, welcome back to The Quick Take, where today we're going to talk about
Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning.
Yes, Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Blood, released in 1985 from Paramount Pictures. Directed by Danny Steinman, known for some incredible soft porn classics like High Rise, Unseen, and Savage Streets. Whoa. We start off with a dream sequence where a young Tommy Jarvis, Corey Feldman, he was brought back for about 5 minutes in this one, though it actually was to feature him in a direct sequel. Well, anyway, Tommy is watching a couple of idiots breaking into Jason's grave, and as predicted, Jason wakes up, makes quick work out of him. Jason sees Tommy, starts going after him. Tommy freaks, and then Tommy wakes up to present day, where he's being driven to his new house or home. It has now been around 5 years since the events of Friday the 13th Part 4, and Tommy still isn't quite right. The place he's headed to is basically an out-of-the-way mental halfway type of facility, interestingly enough resembling a camp with a barn. Where the patients actually don't seem too crazy and more suited for an orgy rather than a killing. Well, anyhow, Tommy arrives, and there's basic, and I mean basic character development. It is so basic it's almost non-existent. The story continues when I say an idiot of a resident, or a ward, or a patient, or whatever you'd call him, is axe hacked by another resident, ward, patient, or whatever. Yep, they keep axes out here at the mental facility for anyone to use, especially those batshit crazy ones. Anyway, after this chop fest for some reason, which we find out later, Jason somehow comes back to life and starts hacking up everyone else at this halfway house camp farm, and also hacks up other characters who don't really matter and shouldn't even be in this movie at all. Meanwhile, the million-dollar question is, ain't Jason dead? Well, to the faithful, it's man, I hope not. And basically to the rest of us is, who gives a shit? Just like Part 4, the final battle is between Tommy and Jason, even though it could have been without Tommy. Seriously, the Tommy character was not even essential to the plot, only written in some sort of a way to draw people to this film. Well, anyhow, through a bunch of predictable twists and turns, the audience is left to wonder what the hell is wrong with this Tommy Jarvis? And is he crazy as Jason? Or is he just Jason himself? Also, I'm sure about half the audience was let down simply because of the surprise ending that really wasn't, and the other half who knew the entire story from the start, they'll also be pissed, just by that fact alone. Of course, I'd get into the meat of this story, but there is no meat to this story. Or let's just say it is somewhat regurgitated from all the rest that preceded it. And like those films, there are a lot of characters you meet that have no business being in this movie other than ending up on a slab. If you've seen any Friday the 13th movies up till this point, you already know the story. Friday the 13th follows a specific formula, and though Jason is basically dead here, the film is no different. As a matter of fact, the good parts of this story are basically cut and pasted from previous films, and the rest is pretty much stupid or crap. In typical Friday fashion, the formula was to get most with less, with as many kills as possible. So I'll get to those kills right now. As you can see, a number of these kills are the same as in other Friday movies. We have seen that same kill from under the bed more than once, as well as other copies of previous kills. But that could just be Jason's forte, right? Well, if that was intentional, then okay. Otherwise, lazy and sloppy from the filmmakers. Now, the garden shears rammed through the eyes and Roy hitting those spikes like a wet sack of cement. Now, those were good. Those were my faves. But most of the rest were actually pretty standard, and the characters die quick and too easy. Now, speaking of characters, honestly, besides the crappy development, most of these characters actually made this movie worse. Now, even good horror movies are better with a little character development, but this isn't one of them. These characters were forgettable and throwaways, and they all could have been interchangeable. Now, even Pam and Reggie, who made it to the end, could have been someone else. Some of these characters, well, they would have been better suited in a Rob Zombie movie. However, it appears that Steinman wanted to add a little extra flavor to his characters in other ways. There were a lot of gratuitous nudie shots, but the final cut was pretty much on par with any other Friday 13th film, or actually any other horror movie from the 80s. But if he would have gotten his way, it could have been a lot worse. Or better, depending on who you're talking to. Steinman had to cut out a shit ton of sex scenes, 16 in fact, to get this movie to an R rating. He also filmed a 3-minute sex scene that was a little too hot for the MPAA, so they threw it out. Now, unfortunately, there are no alternate scenes or director's cuts at this time, so you just got to go with the regular R version. But to finish up this whole thing, Steinman's attempt at a surprise ending was predictable, and it pissed off a number of people who were expecting Jason to be alive. But Jason was clearly dead in Friday 4, and any halfway fan should have known better. But beyond finding out that Jason didn't exist, this was another attempt at an ambiguous ending that didn't quite fly. An over-the-top dream sequence that pretty much was a major fail as far as I'm concerned. And the music associated with it almost made your ears bleed. However, my Brown Eye Award has to go to the Tommy character. Tommy was written as a total basket case and almost an embarrassment to watch. I think he had around 25 words in the entire movie, and the rest of his performance was avoiding people, screaming, crying, or kicking the crap out of someone. He also ran off somewhere 2/3 through this movie, and then just happened to appear at the end. But I wouldn't call this movie a complete turd. It actually was a financial hit. With a budget of $2.2 million, it actually grossed over $22 million worldwide. What makes you wonder, how did so many people hate it? Must have earned most of its cash outside the US. Hell, I don't know. I don't even care. However, I'm sure this movie didn't take itself seriously, and it did follow the format of the other Friday movies. And also, Harry Manfredini came back to create a score, adding a little bit more continuity and mood to the other movies. But this movie was pretty much a cheaper carbon copy with a little more sleaze and a slew of crappy characters. So the final take? Well, if you feel a little sentimental for a Friday the 13th movie in general, you happen to be bored and it's available, take a look. Also, remember, you can make a drinking game out of about anything, so there's always that option. However, if you're a Friday the 13th purist, stick to the first 4 movies and don't go any further. Well, maybe number 6, Jason Lives. That one's all right. Anyhow, once again, thank you for watching The Quick Take. I hope you like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, thank you for being there, and we'll see you soon.